The courtroom was meant to be silent, but instead it trembled with the crack of splintering wood. Every head turned, every eye widened. The heavy oak bench, the kind that had stood in Judge Judy's studio courtroom for years without a scratch, collapsed beneath one woman's weight. The crash rang out like a gunshot, and in that instant, what should have been a routine case became something no one in that room, or watching from home, would ever forget. The woman, later known online only as Karen, rose with furious indignation. She pointed not at the shattered bench, not at her own embarrassment, but at Judge Judy herself. Then came the words that turned disbelief into gasps. She announced she was suing Judge Judy for damages. Before we dive into this case, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love seeing where viewers are tuning in around the world. Don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss more unbelievable cases like this one. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. At first, many thought it was a joke, a prank, a desperate grab for attention that Judy would brush aside with a smirk. But Karen wasn't joking. She was completely serious, and her boldness filled the room like poison. In her mind, she had transformed a humiliating accident into an opportunity. She believed she could turn the courtroom against the most feared television judge in history. What she didn't realize, what no one realized in that moment, was that she had just set off one of the most crushing takedowns ever caught on camera. Because 47 seconds later, Karen wouldn't be suing Judge Judy. She wouldn't be leaving with a victory. She would be sitting in stunned silence, hit with a $50,000 bill, her arrogance shattered, her reputation ruined, her name sealed in viral infamy. The question isn't how Judy won, it's how Karen ever believed she could. And that's where this story begins. Inside a courtroom where arrogance collided with the law, where entitlement met its limit, and where a woman who thought she could outplay the system learned that Judge Judy doesn't just rule, she rules decisively. This wasn't just another Judge Judy case, it was the moment arrogance attempted to sue authority itself. Karen strode into that courtroom with the confidence of someone convinced the cameras were on her side, certain the internet would lift her up for daring to challenge Judy on her own stage. She believed she had found a loophole, an accident she could frame as victimhood, a broken bench she could present as proof of negligence. But she overlooked one crucial fact. Judge Judy thrives on exposing those who try to play the victim when the truth is obvious. With razor-sharp instincts and decades of courtroom dominance, Judy sensed the weakness immediately. That's the pulse of this story. Karen didn't just walk in unprepared. She walked in blind, convinced her entitlement alone would carry her through. She assumed Judge Judy was merely a TV personality chasing ratings, someone who could be rattled by spectacle. But Judy doesn't allow arrogance to prevail. She deals in law. And in 47 seconds, she proved it in a way no one would forget. Think about that number, 47 seconds. That's all it took to turn the entire courtroom upside down. That's all it took to collapse Karen's smug confidence. That's all it took for Judy to expose the truth and deliver a financial blow so sharp that even the internet, often ruthless in its mockery, paused in shock before erupting in applause. 47 seconds, less time than it takes to boil water, less time than it takes to send a text, less time than it takes to blink in disbelief. But before we reach that decisive moment, before we see how Judy dismantled Karen's case with precision, you need to understand what was at stake. This wasn't just about a broken bench. It wasn't just about a lawsuit. It was about respect, authority, and what happens when someone tries to tear down a figure who built a career exposing lies. Judge Judy has faced hundreds, maybe thousands of liars, manipulators, and attention seekers. She has unraveled stories that collapsed under questioning, exposed schemes that crumbled under scrutiny, and sent arrogant claimants out of her courtroom with nothing but embarrassment. What Karen attempted was different. She wasn't simply making a false claim. She was challenging Judy's authority at its core. She was trying to flip the roles, turning judge into defendant, authority into accused. And if she had succeeded, it would have left a mark on Judy's reputation that no number of victories could erase. That's why the tension in the room felt so heavy. That's why the silence after Karen's declaration seemed endless. For the first time in years, someone had stood up and tried to sue Judge Judy inside her own courtroom. It was arrogance disguised as bravery, ignorance dressed up as confidence. And for a brief moment, some wondered if Karen had actually found the edge. Perhaps some believed it was a crack in Judy's armor, but Judy knew better. She always does. The brilliance of what followed wasn't only in her words, it was in her timing. She allowed Karen to speak. She let her spin her web, let her construct her own trap. And when the moment was right, Judy closed it. That's the genius of those 47 seconds. It wasn't chaos. It was precision. And it's why Karen didn't just lose. She lost everything she believed she could gain. This case wasn't merely entertaining television. It became a viral lesson in what happens when arrogance meets truth. Social media didn't just mock Karen. They analyzed her downfall, replayed Judy's response, and turned those 47 seconds into a cultural warning. Don't play games in Judge Judy's courtroom. When the law is on Judy's side, and it always is, lies don't just fall apart, they collapse before millions. This is the story of how Karen broke a bench, sued Judge Judy, and walked away with a debt far greater than she imagined. It's the story of arrogance meeting its limit. And it proves once again that you don't challenge Judge Judy unless you're prepared to lose. When Karen pointed at Judge Judy and declared her lawsuit, the air in the courtroom grew heavy. This was no longer about broken wood. It was about authority. Her claim, bold and absurd, carried risk. If she could persuade the room, if she could plant even a seed of doubt, it would suggest that Judge Judy's courtroom wasn't untouchable. That possibility unsettled the audience. But the stakes were enormous. For Karen, it was about transforming humiliation into triumph. She believed she had found leverage. Her public embarrassment, she thought, could be reframed as proof of negligence. She wanted money, attention, validation. In her mind, the cameras were capturing a victim bravely standing up to a strict judge. If she succeeded, she would leave not only wealthier, but celebrated for challenging the most feared TV judge in America. For Judge Judy, the implications were far greater. This wasn't simply another misguided claimant. It was a direct challenge to her authority inside her own courtroom. If Karen's accusation carried even a trace of credibility, it could suggest that Judy's rulings could be twisted, her control weakened, her authority questioned. One win for Karen could create a dangerous example that anyone could cause chaos and then shift blame onto the judge herself. That's why this wasn't just another dramatic moment for television. It was a confrontation between entitlement and law, arrogance and authority. If Karen somehow prevailed, it wouldn't only damage Judy's reputation, it could encourage others to try the same tactic. Imagine a flood of claimants entering her courtroom armed not with evidence but with outrage. The consequences would be lasting. But if Judy won, and won decisively, it would reinforce the foundation of her career. That truth dismantles arrogance. That respect in a courtroom comes from facts and logic, not volume or theatrics. This was more than broken wood and raised voices. It was a battle for credibility, for the core of Judy's authority. The cameras weren't just recording a case. They were documenting a test of principle. Could someone claiming victimhood rewrite the rules? Or would Judy, as always, demonstrate that arrogance falls in the face of truth? The answer was approaching quickly. And before the ruling came down, everyone in that courtroom felt the weight of it. Karen wasn't merely suing Judy. She was challenging the system itself, the idea that law carries authority and meaning. So when Judy responded, it wasn't just a reply. It was a reckoning. To understand what unfolded in that courtroom, you have to understand Karen. She wasn't just another litigant. She carried herself as if the world revolved around her, loud, entitled, convinced that every inconvenience was someone else's fault. She had built her life on shifting blame and reshaping narratives until she appeared the victim. In her community, she was known for causing scenes in grocery stores, arguing with cashiers, demanding managers over minor disputes. Rules, to Karen, were flexible. Volume meant power. Drama meant justice. When she entered Judge Judy's courtroom, she brought that same energy, convinced the cameras would turn her spectacle into success. Karen didn't arrive armed with evidence or reasoning. She arrived with outrage. She believed her humiliation, breaking the bench, could be transformed into proof of wrongdoing. Karen believed the broken bench could be twisted into negligence. In her mind, it wasn't her fault. It was the court's. And if she framed it correctly, she could erase her embarrassment and turn it into a financial gain. But Karen didn't realize her reputation preceded her. This wasn't the first time someone had tried to weaponize victimhood in Judge Judy's courtroom, and Judy had a track record. She didn't just dismiss arrogance, she dismantled it. Karen's real mistake wasn't the bench. It was thinking the same performance that worked in supermarkets and customer service counters would work in a courtroom governed by law, logic, and sharp authority. That was the fatal flaw in her plan. She underestimated her opponent. She thought Judge Judy was merely a television character to be toyed with, not a seasoned judge who had spent decades exposing liars and manipulators. When Karen stood finger-pointed, voice full of false confidence, she didn't see the trap she was walking into. The truth, Karen wasn't a victim of a broken bench. She was a victim of her own arrogance. And in Judy's courtroom, arrogance always pays the highest price. If Karen's arrogance was the spark, Judge Judy was the fireproof wall in its path. To understand why this confrontation became one of the most unforgettable courtroom moments ever captured, you need to understand Judy and why challenging her was Karen's single biggest mistake. Judge Judy, born Judith Skindlin, built her career on discipline, intelligence, and a razor-sharp intolerance for nonsense. Before becoming a household name, she served as a family court judge in New York City, handling some of the toughest cases imaginable: broken families, reckless parents, and people twisting the truth for personal gain. Day after day, she saw manipulation, excuses, and arrogance at its rawest, and day after day, she cut through it with relentless precision. By the time television brought her into millions of living rooms, Judy had the instincts of a hunter. She could hear lies in the tone of a voice, detect deception in a flicker of an eye, and spot arrogance in a curl of a lip. Her courtroom wasn't just a stage. It was a battlefield, and she was a commander who never lost control. Karen didn't realize this. Judy wasn't a manager she could yell at in a store or a neighbor she could bully into silence. Judy wouldn't back down, soften, or negotiate. She had decades of experience dismantling arrogance, and she had the law on her side. What made her dangerous wasn't just authority, it was speed. Judy didn't need hours to expose a lie. She needed seconds. That's why those 47 seconds mattered so much. In less than a minute, she could turn a claimant's confidence into collapse. Judy's style has always blended sharp wit with brutal truth. She doesn't sugarcoat, coddle, or let theatrics overshadow facts. When someone like Karen walks into her courtroom convinced victimhood will win, Judy sees straight through it. She has spent years watching people twist reality to benefit themselves and knows exactly how to snap it back into place. More than skill, Judy embodies something bigger, authority that cannot be mocked into silence. Millions admire her not just for entertainment, but because she enforces a rare standard of accountability. When Judge Judy speaks, people listen. When she rules, her decisions carry finality. This was the woman Karen decided to sue. This was the woman she thought she could embarrass. Judy didn't just sit at the bench as a judge. She sat there as decades of earned authority, a reputation forged in relentless battles with arrogance and deceit. And when Karen pointed and made her claim, Judy didn't flinch. She waited. She measured. She prepared to strike in the way only she can. Calm, devastating, and impossible to recover from. Karen thought she was facing a TV personality. She was really facing a lifetime of experience condensed into 47 seconds of absolute destruction. That's the essence of this clash: Karen's arrogance versus Judy's authority. In Judge Judy's courtroom, the outcome is never in doubt when arrogance meets authority. It's only a matter of how quickly the hammer falls. The moment the broken bench was cleared and Karen's claim hit the record, the atmosphere shifted. The weight of her arrogance pressed down on the courtroom. Karen stood tall, chest out, voice dripping with false confidence, pointing at the shattered wood as if it were Exhibit A in some grand injustice. Her words rang with the certainty of someone who had convinced herself of the same lie enough times to believe it. "This is your fault, Judge Judy. You put me in danger, and I will be compensated." Gasps rippled through the audience. Even the bailiff raised his eyebrows in disbelief. Karen wasn't just challenging Judy, she was insulting her intelligence, her authority, her control of the courtroom. But Judge Judy didn't raise her voice. She didn't snap back. She simply leaned forward, eyes narrowed, letting Karen keep talking. That was Judy's genius. Silence as a weapon. While Karen blustered, Judy was already dissecting every word, every gesture, every contradiction. Karen thought she was building momentum. But all she was doing was weaving the rope Judy would use to hang her claim in full view of the world. Negligence, Karen repeated like a chant, waving her arms, trying to cast herself as a victim of unsafe conditions, as if the bench itself were a trap laid by the court. Her voice grew louder, her words more dramatic. She was no longer testifying, she was performing. The audience shifted uncomfortably, some glancing at Judy, waiting for her to strike. But Judy stayed still, her expression unreadable. Only her eyes betrayed what was coming, sharp, focused, unblinking. Then Judy moved, slowly and deliberately. Her pen tapped against the desk once, twice, and her voice, calm but edged with steel, cut through the room. "Are you finished?" The question froze Karen mid-sentence. For the first time, doubt flickered across her face. Judy continued, her tone still controlled. "Because if you are, I'll address your claim." The silence that followed was crushing. The entire room understood. The tables had just turned. Karen thought she had Judy on trial, but with one simple question, Judy shifted the power back where it belonged. Karen had said too much. Now the countdown had begun. The 47 seconds that would strip her arrogance bare and leave her owing $50,000. The pause lasted only a breath, but it felt like the room itself held its breath. Then Judy began, voice low, steady, and mercilessly clear. "You claim negligence, Miss Karen. Let's examine that, shall we?" Karen shifted uncomfortably. Judy pressed forward like a seasoned hunter closing in on her prey. In seconds, she outlined the facts. The bench was sturdy, inspected regularly, and had never before broken under anyone's weight. Court staff had records, maintenance logs, evidence stronger than any words Karen could muster. Judy presented it all with surgical precision, each point landing like a hammer. Karen tried to interject, but Judy's glare froze her in place. "A quiet. You'll have your turn," Judy snapped, her tone slicing through the air. The audience leaned forward. This wasn't a debate, it was demolition. Then came the twist no one saw coming. "You're suing for negligence," Judy said, "but the negligence here is yours. You knew your own condition. You ignored warnings, and now you want to turn your choices into someone else's liability." She tapped her pen sharply against the desk. "Not in my courtroom." Karen's face flushed, her confidence drained. She opened her mouth, but Judy cut her off again, words striking like a verdict already decided. "And your claim is dismissed, and since you've wasted this court's time with a frivolous lawsuit, you will pay the penalty, $50,000. The room erupted. Gasps, whispers, even muffled laughter swept through the gallery. Karen's jaw dropped, eyes wide, as if the floor had fallen out from beneath her again. 47 seconds. That's all it took for Judy to turn Karen's arrogance into ruin? Karen stood frozen, bravado gone, replaced by the pale realization that she hadn't just lost. She had been humiliated, dismantled, and left owing more than she could have imagined. The same audience she thought would cheer now shook their heads in disbelief. Some even smiled at Judy's effortless victory. Judge Judy leaned back, expression calm. To her this wasn't personal, it was justice. Another arrogant claimant had walked in thinking they could twist the system, and another had walked out defeated. When the gavel fell and Judy declared the $50,000 penalty, the courtroom wasn't just stunned, it was electrified. The audience, staff, even the bailiff knew they had witnessed something that would echo far beyond those four walls. Karen, who had entered with swagger and confidence, now sat slumped, pale and silent. Her mouth opened once, twice, as if words might come, but nothing. For the first time, Karen had no comeback. The silence after her defeat wasn't empty, it was heavy with meaning. Everyone understood that what had just occurred wasn't merely about money. It was about power. Karen had tried to strip authority from the most commanding figure in television law. In less than a minute, Judy had not only defended it, but amplified it. The shock wasn't just in the ruling, it was in how quickly arrogance had been exposed, how completely confidence had crumbled. Karen's exit from the courtroom was nothing like her entrance. She had stormed in, shoulders back, chin high, pointing fingers. She left in fragments, steps unsteady, face drained of color. The cameras that once seemed like allies now recorded every second of her humiliation. Clips of her downfall spread across social media within hours, replayed millions of times, each replay reinforcing the lesson. Don't try to play games in Judge Judy's courtroom. The aftermath was harsher than the ruling itself. Online, Karen became a symbol not of bravery or victimhood, but of entitlement. Memes mocked her arrogance. Comment sections filled with laughter at her attempt to sue Judy. Hashtags sprang up overnight, branding her the woman who tried to beat Judy and lost $50,000. The internet has a long memory, and Karen's name was now permanently attached to her 47 seconds of infamy. For Judge Judy, the aftermath was the opposite. Her reputation, already immense, soared higher. Fans hailed it as one of her greatest takedowns, a reminder that her courtroom is a place where truth reigns and arrogance burns. Legal commentators called it a masterclass in courtroom authority. Even critics who dismissed her show as television drama acknowledged this case was different, raw, real, and unforgettable. The lesson extended far beyond Karen. It became a cultural example of what happens when entitlement collides with accountability. That Karen believed her embarrassment could be weaponized, that playing the victim would earn sympathy, or even cash. Instead, she discovered the truth. When you challenge real authority with lies, the collapse is swift and brutal. Karen's downfall wasn't just personal. It became a warning to anyone who thinks arrogance is a strategy. The truth is simple. Arrogance always collapses under the weight of reality. In Judge Judy's courtroom, that collapse isn't private, it's public, permanent, and unforgettable. Weeks later, people were still talking about it. Legal blogs dissected Judy's response, highlighting how every word, every pause, every fact was delivered with surgical precision. Motivational speakers and commentators alike pointed to the 47 seconds as a masterclass in authority and accountability.